The first time I heard of Crysis, it was because my friend had just built a computer that was powerful enough to play it. Now, this was right when the game had come out, and it was basically impossible to find a PC that wasn't ludicrously expensive that could run Crysis at all, especially on high settings. This was, essentially, one of the selling points of the game. The term, "but can it run Crysis?" became a meme about the power of your gaming desktop. My friend just happened to be one of those people who was wealthy enough to be able to play Crysis when it launched. His father worked in technology in that vague way where adults have jobs doing something for some company when you're in the 7th grade hearing about their jobs. He made enough money to spend it on frivolous items, such as a gaming computer for his son, where the case was a custom-made bulletproof glass case. It had all the LED lights, water cooling, and whatever other shiny doodads were cool at that point, which I really don't understand at the time and likely still don't understand despite my YouTube subscription to Linus Tech Tips, which obviously makes me a computer genius. I still remember sitting behind my friend as he played Crysis on his shiny new computer. The game looked spectacular. Every detail was simply sharper and better by miles compared to any other game on the market at the time. I mean, this is how games in 2007 looked when Crysis came out. Personally, I did have a rather passive experience with the game though. I got to watch. Like many people who have friends who want to play single-player games, I got the second-hand high of seeing those pretty graphics move and react to the input of the keyboard and mouse, but not actually being able to touch the keyboard or mouse myself. And frankly, that's okay, because the game did not interest me at all. I was a console gamer, and I was really only interested in trying to grind to level 50 of Team Snipers on Halo 3 at this point in my life, so Crysis basically took a major backseat to that. That friend with the fancy computer who loved Crysis recently passed away. It was wholly unexpected and kind of a shock to the system. Now, when I picked up Crysis, I wasn't thinking about him, but unconsciously, it might have pushed me towards this game without me even realizing it. In a way, re-experiencing this game is a tribute to him in a better way than many things, because in my mind, this game is wholly connected to him and that time period of middle school gaming life. So, I guess this video is for him. I miss you, John. Okay, well that's the end of me being vulnerable. Another reason why I might have picked this game, though, is I have a lot of interest in what games companies choose to remaster. This is big business in these days, with more remastered games coming out than original titles for the new console generations. Now, I have no distinct problem with companies recreating these games and allowing people to experience them for the first time or in a definitive way again, but I think the selection of games is always so strange. I put out a review video for the Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition, which to me was a total waste of time and energy to play. I can't imagine a team of developers working to remaster a game that was so incredibly average in basically every way, and yet Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition still came out. Some great games deserve remasters, such as the well-received Shadow of the Colossus game, Crash Bandicoot series, or Demon's Souls. These games had antiquated issues that were solved through the ports, and they just smoothed out the experience, as well as giving the graphics a major boost as well. But the question is, how do companies choose which games to remaster? I mean, Voodoo Vince got a remaster. And that's probably a game you have never heard of, and you probably never will again. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger got a remaster. Flashback got a remaster. Every single Final Fantasy has had multiple remakes and ports on every console. All of the Oddworld games have gotten remasters, and I think there's more games in that series than people who play any of the games. Shadow Man got a remaster. Just random games seem to get remasters. There must be an audience for these games, or else companies will not spend the time and resources to make them. But it seems like they just have one of those big bingo spinners and they just grab a name out of a hat and say, yeah, let's do Sly Cooper this year. And that's kind of how I feel about the Crysis remaster. The game basically only lives now because of how good it looked when it first came out. It's still comparable to modern graphics. And they wanted to upgrade it? And then, it turns out, the remaster actually made the graphics worse. So, really, it was just trying to make a quick penny off of an existing IP. And now they've announced that they're going to remaster the whole series. Oh, yay! Because the first one was so well received. And everyone's just clamoring for more. But honestly, it's clear that it's just so much cheaper to remaster a game than to make something from scratch. So why not take advantage of something that already has name recognition and is cheap to remake rather than doing something original? Video games. But honestly, I didn't pay for the remaster. No. I figured I would hop in and play Crysis the way it was meant to be experienced on the Xbox 360 port. Now, this version lacks the, let's say, visual fidelity of the original PC version. It also lacks the second-to-last mission, according to Wikipedia, but it did add in horrible bugs and glitches, horrible character animations, and the multiplayer component was not there either, which it was in the original PC version. So, maybe I missed out on some of the gameplay quality that the original version contained. That being said, I can confidently say that Crysis, as a base game and narrative, sucks major donkey ass. When this game first came out, PC Gamer magazine gave it a 98%. 98%. Now, this might be because everybody who worked at PC Gamer was a PC Master Race stan, but I cannot fathom how this game would earn that score. Game Reactor, an outlet I have never heard of, said Crysis was a perfect 10 out of 10 and awarded it with its best action game of 2007, saying this: "The action genre is forever changed." GameSpot called it one of the best shooters ever made. IGN awarded it a 9.5 out of 10, hailing it as one of the most entertaining ballistic slowdowns in quite some time, which is a pretty pretentious way of saying the guns sure do shoot good in this game. But I'll admit, I'll take that criticism over saying, the game made you feel like Crysis or some crap like that. It was very well reviewed, and I just don't get it. I know that the gaming landscape was different in 2007 when this game was first released, but this game is shallow and boring and dumb. Even the basic concept sounds lame. You are Jake Dunn, known as Nomad, a future super soldier with an awesome suit that has lots of powers, and you go to an island to take on the evil North Koreans who kidnap some scientists. But it turns out the island is actually home to an ancient alien civilization, and the aliens are awakened and you also have to fight them. Your team is slowly picked off, except for Psycho, a real character's name in the game. His name is straight up Psycho, who helps you. Also, the North Koreans have super soldiers and an evil general who chooses to awaken the aliens. And there's also a love interest scientist lady that you have to rescue off the island as well, of course, duh. It's like they took a bad action movie's narrative, and then they were like, well, I don't know, just turn it into a video game. It'll probably be okay. I know that I place a lot of importance on narrative in games. Those are the games that I like the most, and this one fails spectacularly in the narrative. It's just boring and rote, and the characters start to get killed off very early in the game, but you don't even know their names or anything about them. We see our team for a total of 12 seconds before one of them dies in a mysterious way. It was the aliens. There's no bond there, but they're still trying to create an emotional moment. Honestly, this is a moment that could be played as a parody of a dramatic death in an action movie, but it's not meant to be that way. The plot is predictable, with many missions just essentially being, go shoot that thing. And then you do, and the mission's over. There are side missions that add nothing to the game or narrative either, other than to be something else to shoot, or blow up, or hack, or something like that. It's all the stereotypes of every military man shooter game in one. Nothing more, but nothing less. It's exactly what you might expect it to be. The twist of aliens was also not a huge surprise. It's hinted at from the very beginning of the game when Aztec, the very important character who dies at the beginning, dies. You then vaporize his body in a Viking funeral type display to make sure that the technology of his nanosuit does not fall into the wrong hands. Except that the North Koreans already have their own special nanosuits already, so really we just, burned up that dude's corpse for no reason. But whatever. Your main goal was to save the scientists on this island from the hands of evil General Kyong. You finally face down Kyong in an underground bunker after shooting and exploding your way through many North Korean soldiers and tanks and helicopters and maybe even a few boats. This is supposed to be a climactic boss fight, as Kyong has more health than any other enemy so far in the game, and after you do a certain amount of damage, he will reset the area around you. The only problem is that when I faced Kyong, he glitched into a corner, never fired a single bullet at me, and he absorbed 5 clips of ammo before healing over and dying. It was a very climactic fight indeed. Also, I'm not sure who did the voice acting for your Kyong, but the accent almost sounded offensive. I'm white and a native English speaker, so I'm not sure if my opinion matters that much on this subject, but the accent sounded like somebody trying to do an over-the-top accent, and it just kind of makes you cringe when you hear it. But regardless, that's not the true boss, because the aliens, of course. I do appreciate the levels that made you take on the aliens, just because of the variety that it offered from a gameplay perspective. Shooting and fighting the aliens made for a different challenge, both in the 3D, no-gravity space inside of the spaceship mountain, again, a real thing that happens in this game, and out in the world once you go fight them there. They were fast and aggressive and hurt you much more quickly than the human enemies. It forced you to evolve your playstyle, which is what good enemies do in a combat game. However, after the initial change, they sorta just become bullet sponges as the game progresses. And from a story perspective, the aliens are utter nonsense. They're just included because they needed something more than just the evil Koreans to fight, and that meant aliens. It's also a direct parallel to the original Far Cry, and that shows further the lack of creativity in the writing department. The same company made the original Far Cry and Crysis, and they basically just made the same game twice, but one of them has a super suit. Furthering this bad writing is the combination of Strickland's death scene, which is probably the most anticlimactic death scene I've seen in a video game for a while.
This island is regroup!
And the entire sequence on the boat at the end of the game. Every stereotype from bad science fiction movies are present in that scene. There's the science girl and nerdy weapons manager, the gung-ho nuke-launching commander who ignores the science boys, the secret super weapon that has not been tested but is definitely going to be used to kill the last boss, and a nuclear reactor going critical that you have to stop, including the bonus cliche of the rods not working, so you have to go in there and force them down yourself. Even with the gameplay developments that come with the inclusion of the aliens, the plot is thrown into such disarray that the game transcends ludicrousy and moves into what I call the bullshit domain. It's just not good. The game does try to do some things differently compared to other shooters. It offers a partial open world to explore. The game gives you waypoints for the next mission, but how and when you go there is entirely up to you. If you want to wander around and find some sea turtles to throw, then that's your prerogative. If you want to get to the next mission as quickly as possible, you could also hop in a truck and drive there. This game design was still somewhat novel at that time, but it was also done with Crytek's first game, Far Cry. Far Cry has the same setting, a tropical island, and basic premise, you're a super soldier fighting the evil bad guys, and the same basic mechanics such as the binoculars to spot enemies, the enemy paths of patrol, the open world with various approaches to tackle a problem, and again, the tropical island setting. Crysis just feels like a slightly more militarized version of Far Cry. In Far Cry 1, you're Jack Carver, an ex-Special Forces fighter who owns a private boat charter business in the South Pacific and ends up getting embroiled in a gang war, essentially. Crysis, you're just the soldier himself. There are some positive things about Crysis. For instance, the AI is pretty good. They try to flank you and attack you from different angles. They are always on the lookout for you as an enemy, and they can spot you from really far away. They also have laser precision aim to take you out at range. They try to use turrets, and grenades, and vehicles to their advantage, and all of this is pretty impressive AI for 2007. I was impressed with them. Even though the simplest way to fight any of them is to just shoot them in the head once, the game is presenting itself as a tough military shooter, where it only takes a few bullets to down you despite your super suit. But one shot to the dome is enough to drop almost every single enemy, so you can just sit back and do that. It gets even easier as you get to the sniper rifle, which is by far the most useful gun in the game, until you have to fight the aliens. It essentially removes the chaos of the combat or stealth or really even planning an attack. Instead, you can just shoot the enemies from afar with a sniper rifle. The game tries to offer stealth as an option to take on various enemies, but it never actually is an option. The enemy spots you so quickly and easily, even when you try and turn invisible, that stealth is not even an option. Instead, I invented my own strategy, which is to run past the majority of enemies straight to the objective. You're fast like Sonic in this game. You're really fast, but only for like 2 seconds at a time. And you can utilize this to avoid most of the enemies in the game, because it turns out that for many objectives, you don't even need to kill anyone. So that's kind of nice. Just run straight to the computer you have to hack or whatever. Another unique element in the game is they did have some mild destructive elements in certain areas. You can blow up or bulldoze huts. You can pick up almost every object that is scattered on the ground and throw it as a weapon. It's a little fun to huck a stool or garbage can at an enemy super soldier, but the actual usefulness of it as a tactical decision is essentially pointless. Also, there was this constant comedic timing surrounding how and when the objects would begin to glitch on some terrain or wall, and it would just always cause horrible chaos. It was far from a perfect system, but I appreciate them adding in something so goofy like that, like being able to pick up a chicken and throw it at an enemy. All in all, the game just lacks consistent depth. There are not enough weapons, enemies, level variety, suit powers, anything. The gunplay is pretty bad, and the story is horrible. There's no multiplayer or other options outside of the campaign, at least on the Xbox 360 version. I guess there was multiplayer on the PC, but I didn't play that version, and I'm pretty sure the servers got shut down probably, 10 years ago. I don't understand how this game deserved any of the attention outside of the one thing that it had going for it, which was the graphical fidelity that it was offering. And that is obviously impressive. However, I was never, and will never be, somebody who places importance on the number of pixels or polygons on the screen. I don't care about ray tracing or RTX or any of that shit. So, if you remove all of that from the realm of importance, is Crysis a game that is worth actually playing? The answer is absolutely not. The game is not good. For some reason, people in 2007 were in awe of the graphics.
When you first saw Halo, were you blinded by its majesty?
Blinded?
Paralyzed? Dumbstruck?
And it let them be blinded to the fact that this Shootman game has absolutely nothing going for it outside of the graphics. I mean, in 2007, Halo 3, Call of Duty 4, BioShock, Rainbow Six Vegas, Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2, Half-Life 2 Episode 2, Mass Effect, and the original Uncharted were all released. All of those games were better in every single way to Crysis, other than the graphics. I know that the video game industry and fans pay a lot of attention to technological achievement. That is, at the core, what video games require. However, I think Crysis missed out on the actual gameplay and story, and that takes away any weight that the game has at all. It's unfortunate because of how good the game actually does look, but the game's trash. After I wrote this review, I realized how negative it sounded, especially with my sort of intro talking about my friend who passed away. But I think that's important to be honest with how I actually felt about the Crysis game. Even though it has this weird realm of nostalgia that it lives in my mind because of him and unfortunately what has happened to John recently, I still think it was fascinating that once I actually sat down and played the game myself, rather than sitting behind somebody and watching it, I realized that the game sucked. If all I had done was sit on his bed while he played Crysis, I would have thought it was the most amazing game of all time. But the second I picked it up, I realized otherwise. Nostalgia is kind of like a cloud, and sometimes you have to push the clouds out of the way to see the truth. And I think that's what happened with Crysis. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.